Hi there. Wow, I'm super excited to be with you this week, talking about learning from mistakes. So, if we haven't met, my name is Dr. Marissa May, and I thought we'd spend some time just kind of talking through how to make the most of the mistakes that we find ourselves making and how to learn from that so that obviously we don't want those to happen again, but I think there's some great opportunity there. So let's begin by some introductions. So we'll pass around the mic here to let everyone have a chance to introduce themselves. And I'll start first. Like I said, my name is Dr. Marissa May, but at my core, I guess you could say I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm an educator. Spent 21 years in this industry, I guess you want to say. I've seen the ups and downs. I started my teaching career when Y2K was coming out, was a big concern, and then with we just finishing up the global pandemic of 2020, and so I feel like I've kind of weathered through some big changes in education, and that being said, I have spent some time in a brick and mortar classroom where I taught face to face, both at the high school level as well as the post secondary level. And then, but the latter part, probably the last 10 years, I've spent the majority of my time in the virtual classrooms, working with students all over the country at every level possible. I like to say that my youngest student was 4, and my oldest student was 72. So I've taught a wide range. Now, the majority of my time spent has been with math. So I was certified as a math teacher, and but I teach a little bit of everything. I enjoy the learning process. I enjoy the education process. So that being said, I'm very, very passionate about continuing to learn. Um, I'm a journaler. I track. I'm a huge goal setter. You'll find that out in our session today. I thought I'd share just a little bit. Um, I do. Oops. I do book challenges. So and I'm going to share you exactly. I just filled it out this morning with my first book for this year. So I track my books that I read. Charlie Tremendous Jones once said that you'll be the same person 5 years from now that you are today, except for the people that meet and the books that you read. So I'm a huge book reader. I'll share some of, in our time together, I'll probably share some of the books that I've read, some things that I have kind of gleaned and that I fall back on when I am working on learning something because like I said, I'm a huge believer and proponent of um, lifelong learning. And so you'll see that in a lot of the things that I do and what we talk about. So, where am I from? I am located in Houston, Texas. I'm not actually in the city, I live on the outskirts of the city, but I've spent my entire life in the state of Texas. I did grow up originally in the central Texas area. Then, when I was preteen, moved to Houston, and then I went back to Central Texas to for my college days, and then came back to Houston and have lived here for the last 20 years. So that's where I'm from. A little bit more, if we're not talking geographically, I'm from a large family. So my parents had 4 children, but then also took in foster children while I was at home. And so it was not abnormal for me to be in a home with, I think at one point there were 14 people that living in the house with us. And so if you come from a large family, you understand the huge dynamic, the dynamic that goes on in a home with that many people. So That's where I'm from. That's what I know. I like to laugh because my husband and I have 5 children of our own and enjoy every single one of them. But my husband is an only child. And so sometimes he wakes up and he's like, whoa, it is a lot going on here. And I'm like, yeah, there is a lot going on here. For me, because that's what I grew up with, I think it's very, very normal. But um, he is just kind of sometimes like, oh my goodness, I remember. So, of our 5 children, the oldest 3 are girls and the youngest 2 are boys. And when the girls were all little, my husband would come to me and he'd go, do they really need to talk that much? And I said, mm-hmm, they really do. So that's kind of my background. I'm a huge believer that education is this great gift, right? And I like to say education can be your trump card. It can be um, this key that helps to unlock doors and opportunities that you would not have otherwise had access to. So I won't get on my soapbox, but please know that I'm very, very passionate about what I do and why we're here. So why am I here? Well, I believe in unlocking those doors and helping people along their journey. So, part of learning from our mistakes is learning what we do want to do and learning what we don't want to do. Um, I like to say that in part of growing up, I could view what my parents did and I could say I want to do it exactly like they did it in that area, or in this area I don't want to do it anything like that. So it's a learning process to then expand our perspective to be able to say I want to do some things like that. And then there's another part that I say, I don't want to do it anything like that. So that's why I'm here, because I want to continue on this lifelong journey um, with a learning in mind. So think about why you're here. Think about your goals that you set out before this class and what you hoped to accomplish. I think those are important to always keep at the forefront of our mind. So let's go ahead and get started then. Good journal prompt. So for this one, I'm going to give us just a little bit of time. And you'll notice you'll want to have um, something to write with and some paper. I've got mine right here because I'm going to journal right alongside with you. Um, because I think this reflection and this journaling process is very important for us being able to make strides in our learning. Like I said, I'm a journaler. So my book that I showed you guys earlier, this is my, I track my goals, but I also journal in it. I've got to-do lists. I doodle in it. But whatever you use, if you just want to use a piece of paper, today I'm just using a piece of paper. And but we want to journal, so we're going to take just a little bit of time to journal here about our mistakes. And this one you want to just be transparent. Nobody else is going to read this about you. Okay. Sometimes the act of journaling actually prompts the brain to engage with a memory so that it can be used as a learning opportunity as well. And so that's why we're journaling. So what I'd like to do is give us just 3 minutes here um, in order to journal on this prompt. What mistakes have you made in your career that you wish you could redo? And number 2, what mistakes have you made in your career that actually have turned into helping you be successful? So take just a few minutes here. I'm going to jot down my ideas for these 2 journal prompts. I'll set us a timer for 3 minutes, and then we'll come back to discuss. So, for those of you who are watching the recording, I did take a moment and pause the recording so that you wouldn't have dead time for 3 minutes. But I did want to kind of just share a little bit of my response to this journal prompt. Not that my way is or my mistakes are, the quintessential mistakes that you must make, but I think they're very common. Um, so one mistake that I think I made in my career very early on, and my career as a teacher, when I first began teaching, I I had an experience where I was put to teach a class that had no book. In fact, I was given a binder. Remember the old binders, right? I was given a binder of examples of what they thought the class should look like. And I was told, go for it, basically. And this was my very first year of teaching. Like I had never taught before. And this was the class that I was assigned to teach. Um, Very quickly, I had to figure out what this whole thing was about, what this whole writing curriculum and designing activities. Now, mind you, I am dealing with high school students, okay? And these are high school students who don't like math, and I'm trying to teach them math. So I had to very quickly figure out how to do all of that. Those skills that I gained in the first couple of years of teaching when I was writing all of these things to go with a class that had no book and no resources, um, I I wish I could have like known what to do in those instances, but there really is no way I could have known. And so I was partnered with a wonderful lady who kind of showed me the ropes, right? And figured out. So there's a part of that I wish I could go back and redo because I felt like there was so much that I could have done better in that time. But man, I made many mistakes during that time that has helped me because now I'm able to write curriculum. I can look at a concept, whether you have a book or not, doesn't bother me. Like I feel like I'm so much better of an educator because I don't have to worry about having a resource because those years that I had to work without a resource helped me. So it's a mixed bag, right? Like there's some mistakes that I wish that I could go back and fix and not have to go through again. But at the end of the day, they are what made me stronger. What was that? Oh, what's that song that says what doesn't kill you makes you stronger? It definitely was so true in those years. So that's just a little bit about my experience with mistakes. For our session today, we're going to use a particular business to help us. We're going to kind of look at what they did well, what they did not do well. And that business is going to be Kodak. Now, if you know anything about Kodak, Kodak is all about camera related products. Um, they focused on film and print from their headquarters in Rochester, New York. And so we'll share a little bit of tidbits along the way about Kodak, the goods and the bads, everything that they did right, everything that they did wrong, how they can learn and from that. So a couple of mistakes that we make that are very, very common, um, not only in business, but also in our everyday life, right? And I'm going to focus on these three mistakes. First of all, ignoring the numbers. Second, failing to do the research. And the third one, ignoring risk. Now, we're going to focus our time on here's the mistake and how do we avoid it? Because I think if we can be self aware that these mistakes are coming, that these mistakes are common to everyone, then we can set a plan to be very intentional to avoid those mistakes. So let's look at the first one, which is ignoring the number. I love this quote. Numbers don't lie. If you have not seen the movie Hidden Figures, oh my goodness, it is one of my favorites. If you have seen it, you know you can appreciate it, even if you're not a math person. But Hidden Figures is the story of three African American ladies who changed the landscape of NASA when we were on the way for the shuttle missions. And each of these ladies were math brains. There's no other way to say it, but they were math geniuses. And one of them, Katherine Johnson, she actually calculates by hand. This is right when the computers were coming out, but she calculates by hand the trajectory of a shuttle mission. And she tells the people around her, numbers don't lie. She's trying to tell them that the mission is doomed to fail because she's calculated that it won't make the correct trajectory that it needs. But I love that line, numbers don't lie. Meaning, if we are, whether in personal or in business, if we're doing our personal budget and there's more going out than there is coming in, numbers don't lie. We're going to have a problem at the end of the month. Okay. Same if we're in business, right? If we're making our quarterly budget, our monthly expense budget, if our sales are not bringing in enough money to cover all of our expenses, we've got a problem. And the numbers don't lie. It's not like the numbers are trying to fool you, right? So what we do, and speak real personal, is I don't want to deal with that. Oh, I don't want to come up with my budget. I don't want to even look at the numbers when I know, oh man, I way overspent on Christmas and now January's here and I'm going to have to deal with the fact that we've got to eat in January. But the numbers don't lie. So many times, if we can check the numbers, put our budget down on paper, put it in an Excel spreadsheet, whichever way works for you, then we can actually see the big picture. We can make wise decisions instead of ignoring the numbers and pretending like they're not there. And I'm as guilty as anybody, right? When I don't want to deal with the fact that it's going to be a tight month in my business or a tight month in my personal life, then sometimes I just want to, no, I'll do the budget later. No, I'll think about it later. But remember, the numbers don't lie. So really spend some time with them so that you can see exactly what you're dealing with. The second most common mistake that we see is failing to do the research. Now, this research can take form in a lot of different ways: journals, news, podcasts. Really, when we're going to make a very important decision in our life, take the time to do the research. Become an expert on whatever the topic is that you're wanting to um, invest in, make a change with. One of the best examples, and I laughed for many years because she did this, but I look at it now and I'm like, she was just doing her research. So my mother-in-law, when she makes a car purchase, I laugh because she she gets the consumer report. She knows all the safety features on that car. Like, she has analyzed the different car manufacturers and the type of car that she wants. I remember her last purchase was a van, and she literally became the experts on that mid-size van um, market. She knew everything. She knew this manufacturer had this and this one had this economy and what their mileage per gallon was. And I was just like, whoa. But she was trying to do her research so that she didn't make a mistake with an important purchase in her life. That's really what we're looking at here. Take the time to do the research. Spend some time looking at it from a different perspective than maybe you've done before. Look at it from, have you checked out what the naysayers are saying about that product or that new product line that you want to launch in your business? Sometimes looking at what the complaints about the product or complaints about the process, it can help you be aware as you go into it. Like, okay, this is something I'm going to have to deal with. It's just a part of it. And so take some time to do your research. The third mistake that we'll look at is ignoring that risk is involved. Bottom line is there's always risk involved. It may be low, it may be high, but there's always risk involved. And we have to be aware of that. My grandmother used to say, prepare for the worst, but hope for the best, right? And so that's where you want to kind of set your situation to say, you know what? If all things fall apart, I'm prepared for that. But if all things go well, man, it's going to be super easy to be there too. And this third point that I have here is a really good one. If it only works when everything works, it's probably not a good idea. This is one that has gotten me a lot because I want to make a decision. I'm pretty much an optimist a lot. I think of all of the plus sides and all the positives of people. And I don't always think of the negative sides. And so my husband will come and say, you know, if it only works when it all works, then we have to be very, very careful because it's not probably a good idea if I'm betting on everything to work in order for this to all be working. So keep those in mind that risk is always involved. Okay. Even if it's a risk that may not be a value that you can associate with it. For instance, let's say you decide to go well, I'll give you one for our kids. We made a decision for our kids to be involved in a particular activity. Okay. In choosing that, we also have to think about there's a downside, right? By choosing for our kids to be involved in this activity, that meant we had to be available 1 week in a month to go to that activity. We had to be prepared to pay for the added expenses of that activity. That meant we couldn't do these other things, right? So really look at the risk and the downsides involved. Look at both sides of the situation as you get ready to make a decision. So just to recap, we talked about 3 common mistakes here. First of all, ignoring the numbers. Remember, numbers don't lie. So take some time to really look at your numbers. In my house, we call it number crunching, right? Put some pencil and paper to it. If you want to use Excel, I kid you not, we still use a calculator. Like, I mean, I'm not talking about actually the mechanics of the math. I'm talking about actually looking at the numbers and trying to figure out that how to make everything work. Okay. And then the second one, failing to do the research. Remember, take some time to become the expert on whatever it is you're trying to make a decision about. If you're going to make a decision in your business, if you're going to make a decision at work, maybe you're going to decide whether to continue on with this job or if you're going to move to another one, take the time to do the research. Look at all the pieces and parts. So you make not the best decision, although we do want you to make a good decision, but you make the most informed decision. And then finally, we don't want to forget that risk is always involved. In any decision that we make, there's always risk or a downside to the decision. So think about it from all perspectives. If you need to reach out to someone else to say, you know, hey, what am I not thinking of here that would help me make a better decision? That's some good, valuable input that you might want to seek out from a friend or someone that you trust. What is it that I'm not thinking about? Or what is it that I'm not considering here? I think that's going to help us to make the best decision possible. So here we are at journal prompt number 2. And these are totally reflective. Now, our journal prompts are intended to help you think. And I know sometimes that can be problemsome. My children, I like to say, listen, you're a smart girl or boy. You can make, you are going to figure this out. You are going to come up with a solution, but you're going to have to think. And sometimes we don't want to think. So, really embrace our journal prompts as an opportunity just to think about these things that you might not have thought about before. So, what areas of your life do you need to devote time to research? So, this may be something, maybe it's goal setting. Maybe it's something that you want to do in this upcoming year that you haven't done before. Maybe there's some things you want to do with your kids that you haven't done before. Maybe you want to be intentional with some time and activities that they're involved in. So, what are some areas that you just need to spend some more time looking into? And then your second question, turn your thoughts then to your professional life. What areas of your professional life do you need to devote time to research? Is there a certification that you need to add to your skill set? Is there maybe some further things, skills that you want to learn how to do that don't really have anything to do with the certification? Maybe it's just you taking some time to read and educate yourself in things that are even free. My goodness, you can learn a lot on YouTube, right? You definitely can. And so maybe it is something that you want to do there. But take 3 minutes here to reflect on this journal prompt. And again, for those of you who are watching the recording, I'm going to pause our recording so that you don't get 3 minutes of dead time, but then we'll come back together and I'll share a little bit of my journal prompt for you. So how'd you do? That one for me was a little bit difficult because I'll be honest with you, I am a huge goal setter. I believe in setting goals. In fact, I've got goals already for this year. I've got it broken down by the first quarter already, month by month. And the month, I've got it broken down week by week. Um, and so for me, this is so tied into my goals that for some of them, I had to really think about what did I say in my goals and how does that apply? So I'm just going to share a little bit and then I want to share something that I've learned about learning from our mistakes. So, first of all, for my personal goals, my personal life, I wanted to devote time to research. Like I said, a huge reader, and I do read aloud times with my kids. That's basically where they sit back and they get to just enjoy the story and I'm reading aloud the book, whatever that is. And so I want to do some research about what books my kids might like, particularly with their ages. And then are those books available at the local library? Because I don't really want to spend a whole lot. I have 5 kids. And so we can read books pretty fast. And I want to, just do my research to find out what book would be good for my age range. And then are they available at the local library? And then for my professional life, what do I need to devote time to research? For me, this is something that I had to ask myself, okay, what am I doing to continue to develop and grow myself? And the, I'm very aware that learning happens even after we leave school, right? Learning happens even, I mean, sometimes we even learn more after we leave school. Um, but I want to continue that. Like I said, I'm a huge supporter of lifelong learning. And so I want to be continuing to feed my brain and grow in areas that I need to continue to grow. And it brought me back to a book that I have on my shelf, and I was able to pull it. It's called Mindset by Carol DeWick. Um, in this book, Dr. DeWick talks about two different mindsets, a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Now, if you want to pick up the book, it'd be totally fine. It's not too brainy. Sometimes when books are written by doctors, they're just kind of over the top. Um, but Dr. DeWick explains the two mindsets as a fixed mindset and as a growth mindset. And the growth mindset, and I'm going to read a portion from it. She says the growth mindset is based on the belief that your basic qualities are things you can cultivate through your efforts, your strategies, and help from others. Although people may different, excuse me, let me start that again. Although people may differ in every which way in their initial talents and aptitudes, interests, or temperaments, everyone can change and grow through application and experience. And I love that. I love that idea that, you know what, I didn't just get the genetics and the brain that I got and I'm stuck, right? I really have a part to play. I can continue to grow. I can cultivate the things in my life that I want to grow. Um, and so I love this analogy she gives us of the two different mindsets. And bear with me, I'm going to share it with you because I think it's so powerful. She says, to give you a better sense of how the two mindsets work, imagine as vividly as you can that you're a young adult having a really bad day. One day you go to a class that is really important to you and that you like a lot. The professor returns the midterm papers to the class and you got a C plus. You're very disappointed. That evening on the way back to your home, you find that you've gotten a parking ticket. Being really frustrated, you call your best friend to share your experience, but are sort of brushed off. What would you think? What would you feel? What would you do? When she asked this scenario to people with a fixed mindset, this is what they had to say. I'd feel like a reject. I'm a total failure. I'm an idiot. I'm a loser. I'd feel worthless and dumb. Everyone's better than me. I'm slime. In other words, they'd see what happened as a direct measure of their competence and worth. Now, for those, and I'm skipping a little bit part, I want to see when she gave the same scenario to the growth mindset, here's what they said they'd think. I need to try harder in class, be more careful when parking the car, and wonder if my friend had a bad day. The C plus would tell me that I'd have to work a lot harder in the class, but I have the rest of the semester to pull up my grade. There's many like this, but you get the idea. How would they cope? Directly. I'd start thinking about studying harder or studying in a different way for my next test in that class. I'd pay the ticket and I'd work things out with my best friend the next time we speak. Now, the last thing I'll share with what Dr. DeWick says, you don't have to be one mindset or the other to be upset. Who wouldn't be? Things like a poor grade or a rebuff from a friend or loved one, those are not fun events. No one was smacking their lips with relish. Yet those people with the growth mindset were not labeling themselves and throwing their hands up. Even though they felt distressed, they were ready to take the risk, confront the challenges, and keep working at them. And I think I share that portion from her book because it spoke to what I need more research on, but I think it also speaks to what we all can do as we're learning from our mistakes is view them as a learning opportunity. So that was a little bit more than I intended with prompt number 2, but that's okay. We're all learning. It's good to use this opportunity to share that. And then let's look at our business again. Remember, we were talking about Kodak. In 1975, Kodak invented the first digital camera. They were the first to do it. However, they couldn't keep up with the pace of technology changing. And so that left them very, very far behind when digital photography made the original film photography obsolete. So they were the first to create or to invent the digital camera, but they couldn't keep up with the pace of the changes in the technology. Something to think about as we're going forward with our business spotlight and we're learning from those mistakes. So we talked a little bit about just ignoring that risk is actually something we have to consider. And so how do we pinpoint risk? Well, sometimes, let's be honest, numbers and logic do not lead to a clear answer. Sometimes the numbers, while they don't lie, do not scream at us a particular solution. It doesn't say, oh, you should most definitely do this. So we're forced to rely on intuition sometimes. After I've considered the numbers, I many times might have to go with a gut feeling to find the best possible solution. So let's think of a scenario. Let's say that our lease is up and we're going to need to move. Okay. We've looked at all these options. Maybe we've got 10 different options of where we can move to. We've run the numbers. Remember, in my house, run the numbers means to look at the numbers, look at your budget, look at what you can afford. And my budget, my numbers, running the numbers has narrowed it down to 3, right? So 7 of the previous options are gone. I've got just 3 that I can look at now. And my numbers did not give me a clear one place that I should choose to move to. In that case, then I've got to look at the 3 and go with my feeling. Okay. But notice that I didn't ignore the numbers when I had all 10 of them. I mean, if I ignored the numbers and just went with feeling first, I might have chosen the most expensive one, which was out of my budget. Something to think about, how I can use the numbers with my intuition to make the best decision possible for me and my family. So, how do we alleviate risk? And that word alleviate is a good word, but I also think we probably with risk, we're probably not going to be able to remove it all the way. Instead, we have to minimize the risk. And I think that we can do that in 3 ways. And first of all, that first way is to diversify. I use this one mainly in a business sense. Author John Acuff says that if we are going to be in business, we need to have a minimum of 5 streams of income, meaning that we're getting our business from 5 different areas in our business, not just one. And the idea is that if one of the lines goes down, you've still got 4 others in order to be able to make good progress in your business. This might look like product lines. This might look like different areas. For instance, maybe you provide a service. Maybe you provide parts. Maybe you provide maintenance. Maybe you provide new installation. You see how there's 5 different areas that you can that your business relies on for income and not just one. Another way to alleviate risk is to look at where they're coming from, right? To know that they're coming in advance. And that we can only know when we look to the past. Like, I know that in January my sales are going to be low because I'm selling a retail product and retail is high in December and we know people tighten up in January, therefore my sales are going to be down in January. That's a risk, but it's a risk I can handle if I know that it's coming, meaning I can start making some preparations in September and October and November, setting back a little bit to absorb some of the risk that I know January is going to bring. And then thirdly, advice is always good when it comes from people who know more about the business, meaning I know that taxes are going to be due in April. So, or if you're doing a business one, they're going to be due in March. My tax advisor can help me plan for that so that it doesn't catch me off guard. I find sometimes that risks that I don't know anything about, they kind of blindside me if I'm not ready for them. And I can be ready for them with the help of some professionals that can guide me and steer me towards what it is I really need to spend time on. I love this quote by Alberto Salazar. If you want to achieve a high goal, you're going to have to take some chances. You're going to have to take some risks. But this is how we minimize those risks. So I heard a story once that says, when you're fixing to jump into a boat, you want to make sure the boat is close enough to the dock before you jump. So how do you pull that boat closer to the dock? That's how you minimize some of the risks so that you don't get wet when you jump. Learning from failure. So how do we do that? How do we learn from the failures that we see? I think first and foremost, we have to consider the awful truth. I'm sorry, not the awful truth. We want to face our fears. I've got a quote right now from author Bob Goff, and I've got it on a little sticky note here by me, and I'm going to share it with you. In his latest book, Dream Big. If you have not read Bob Goff, everything he writes is amazing. Love Does was his first book. That's a good one to read with your kids about um, treating people, loving people well. But here's what he says about fears. He says, fears don't really get conquered. They're just understood and given less power. Figure out your fears, kick them in the teeth, and get back to work. You're not a hostage anymore. I think that's a really good advice for how we can move forward with our fears, right? They're not going to go away. But if we face them head on, we give them less power, we're able to move forward. The second one, consider the awful truth. This is where I think we can look at what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that can happen out of this, right? I had a situation where my daughter wanted to do something, and it really, well, it wasn't something that they wanted them to do. And this was on her team. And we said, okay, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? She goes, well, the worst thing that could happen is I'd be kicked off the team. Okay, well, are you okay with that? If you are, then this is not a problem. But you have to make a decision about the awful truth, the worst thing that can happen. Number three, we got to talk about our failures. Talking about it brings that scary monster that's in the closet out of the closet and brings them into the light. And then they're not as scary anymore, right? So we have to talk about our failures. We have to talk about the fact, you know what? I was not a great teacher my first year I taught. You know what? I was not a good, um, whatever, you fill in the blank. But I'm getting better. I mean, whatever you want to do, but talking about it helps us own it and move on from it. And then the final advice there for learning from failure is have a backup plan ready to go. So if it does fail, what are you going to do? Right? Have your backup plan ready to go. And I heard this saying, it said, have a plan B. But when plan B doesn't work, remember there are 24 more letters in the alphabet. So do you have a plan C, a plan D, a plan E? My husband likes to say that my plans have plans. My to-do lists have to-do lists because I have a backup plan, a contingency plan for all of these things moving forward. Have those plans in place so that when failure happens, and notice I didn't say if failure happens, I said when failure happens, because we're not perfect. When failure happens, you can pivot and you can make a change to your backup plan. So let's talk a little bit about this journal prompt from author Bob Goff here. Remember, he said that fears don't really get conquered. They're just understood and given less power. Figure out your fears, kick them in the teeth, and get back to work. You're not a hostage anymore. So for our third and final prompt, what fear do you need to give less power where your career is concerned? Be specific so that it has less power. Let's take 3 minutes here to write about this, journal about it. And again, those of you who are watching the recording, I'm going to pause it so that you don't get 3 minutes of dead time. Then we'll come back together. So how was that? Oh, I love this journal prompt. Like I said, I've got it on a sticky note right here beside my my desk because it's a big one for me. I'll just be transparent here. I am a little bit afraid of some things I'm doing. I'm getting ready to start writing an article, um, and I'm a little nervous. I'm a little afraid because obviously, as a math teacher, writing's not my huge thing. But I feel like this pandemic has kind of thrust us into a situation where we've got a lot of things going on with our kids who were out of school, the school buildings, and forced to go online, even though maybe they weren't, that wasn't their preferred method of learning environment. And I feel like there's an opportunity to share. What are we going to do about this? How are we going to help these kids? And so I'm getting ready to do some writing for that kind of article to go out. And I'm fearful. I need to give it less fear about less power of the fear of writing so that I can move forward. And I'll share my other quote. I've got two here that I have for this month. And it's been one that's been really good for me because I'm getting ready to write. And I keep thinking about, oh, I need to be inspired and what's my inspiration and all this stuff. And this is a quote by author Stephen King. Many of you have read some of his books, and it says, amateurs sit and wait for inspiration, while the rest of us just get up and go to work. And that is encouraging to me that, you know what? I don't have to have this huge inspiration for my writing. I just need to write, right? I need to write out some of the thoughts and ideas that I have that are going to help some schools and help some kids in classrooms to overcome this gap of learning that we experienced in 2020. And so that's one for me that I've got to give that fear of writing, that fear of failure, honestly, or fear that someone's not going to like my writing. I got to give it less power so that I can move forward. And I'll have to keep you posted on how that goes because it's something I have to work through all the time. Maybe you do too. Our final business spotlight here. By the time that Kodak, remember, they invented the first digital camera in 1975. We saw that in our spotlight number 2, but they couldn't keep up with the changes in technology. By 2012, they were bankrupt because it couldn't keep up with the technological advances here. So, in order to pay back its investors, Kodak had to sell its patents on many items, and it sold it to high powered companies like Apple, Google, and even Facebook just to pay its investors back. So, I think Kodak has an opportunity to learn from their failures of not being able to keep up with the technology. Now, what will they do moving forward to learn from that, to avoid that mistake a second time? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I hope they have some things in plan to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. That's all I have for today. It's been so fun to talk about learning from our mistakes. Like I said, I'm a huge proponent of learning, lifelong learning. I'm reading. I just feel like we have a job before us, not only in our professional lives, but also in our personal lives to continue to grow and develop. Um, if you're a parent, you're right there with me. We are setting the stage for our children, and we have to model what we want our kids to get. And so, are they seeing us learning? Are they seeing us continuing to grow and develop and hone our craft in our professional life? And are they seeing us continue to develop and as a person as well? I leave you with that challenge that we press on to do that. Here are my social media handles. If you want to connect with me, I would love the opportunity to do that. Um, so thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for attending. I enjoyed it. If there's anything else I can do to help, I would love the opportunity to do that. Bye for now.